right, hello and welcome to Stampscapes Live. Thanks for joining in. We're going to be adding some tweaks to this fairly large 8.5 by 11 piece. I felt that, I don't know, if there's a common theme with most of these tweak videos, I always feel strange mentioning, calling it tweaks, but that's what they are. They're little adjustments or additions, you know, in the name of improvements, minor improvements. This one is on a semi-gloss cardstock, and it is using the hybrid inks that I was experimenting with at the time that I need to get back to because they really lend themselves to some really great types of, I don't know, just tonal qualities and the way that you can blend those types of colors onto you know, your semi-gloss or matte papers. It feels like using kind of a liquid form of pastels. I wouldn't necessarily say oil pastels, but imagine if your pan pastels or something like that were in liquid form. That's the type of quality that I tend to think about when applying these. Okay, but that being said, this piece right here, in this foreground area, I felt could use some additional texturing just for a little bit of variation. I'm pretty happy with it, though, in terms of just, you know, the overall finish on it. And there are some details in here. I made them really super subtle, though, in terms of, you know, just the visibility of them, because this is supposed to be underwater. It's a fairly dark environment. But that being said, I just felt that on this large format paper, and I consider 8.5 by 11 to be fairly large format as far as card making goes, I just felt it needed some additional detailing. Now, one of the things I hadn't thought about before was that these acrylic paint pens are somewhat raised. So in darker areas, I don't know, I just never thought about this, but we can add in some black raised detailing in here that isn't going to be very visible, but it lends itself to a little bit more of a dimensional look. And I thought that could be cool as like a real subtle type of texture. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, that being said, in this live stream, you know, applying black on top of black, but we'll see how this goes right here. So, all right, so these hybrid inks are a little bit more flat in terms of their overall appearance. They're not super deep, although I'd call them rich, but they're not going to be deep because they're not so transparent. They're more translucent in tone, okay? So they're very surface oriented too, much more akin to like your pigment inks or whatnot, as opposed to absorbing into the page. But you know, the hybrid aspect of them does have the dye-based ink type of saturation, so they do penetrate a little bit, but just, I'd say, a lot more surface oriented than anything. Okay, so I have a lot of pens here, and I have a feeling I haven't used all of these before, and I didn't have these pens when I did this piece originally. Now, whether or not I would have used them on there or not, had I had them, I'm not quite sure. I have a feeling I would have, though. And we're going to follow up with some more detailed types of textures. I don't want to go overboard with this, though, because like I said, I'm pretty happy with it as is. But I just think that it could use a little bit more to it. So in regards to the selection of the type of color range that we're going to choose to use on here, I'm going to use the same colors that I did for the most part with those hybrid inks. Okay, so those hybrid inks, I'm not going to grab them out right here, but it was kind of in this range right here. There was a kind of a blue range, of course, but then there were kind of more of that greenish gray tinge, you know, a little bit of bluish tinge. And I just line them up, basically going from light to dark. And this is the process that I do with just about every type of color application process that I go through. So here's the larger ones done in a similar color scheme. Now I'm going to have like the exact colors all the time, okay? And you don't have to use every single color within a color scheme. But if you just kind of break it up into a nice tonal range, it should work. Let me see. Let me get myself on there. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so dark to light and dark to light right here. Oh, Candy, that's a tough one. I haven't gone through. I failed to answer that type of question. I would have had to have tried many different types of pens. Okay, but that being said, in terms of the 0.7 millimeter, it's the one that I have listed in this description. And the 3 millimeter one, okay, I've only tried 2 different types. With the 0.7 millimeter, I've tried about 3 different types. One of them had a better ink, but the construction of the pen wasn't as good. The nib, I don't know, and a couple of them fell out when I was shaking it out, or just opened the cap up and the nib came out, which you can just insert right back in there again. And it was fine. It flowed and it didn't leak or anything like that. But I feel hesitant about kind of recommending something like that. But the inks were more dense, okay? And that's the... Oh, I can't even remember the name of it. It might have been the Lan Ren Wang ones, okay? And they're known... They point out on their descriptions that the ink density or pigment content is higher, okay? Meaning they're more opaque, which is better, right? But just the construction of the pen was a little bit, I don't know, wonky. I'm trying to remember if that was the brand. I'm looking around for an additional set to remember what ones those were. It might not have been the Lan Ren Wangs. It might have been these ones right here. But I'm not quite sure. I don't remember now. But the video is online, and I do mention that during the entire process. So, yeah. But I should say that I'm guessing that most brands I'm pretty happy with. I would say if I didn't know what I know, I think I would be fine with any of them. And I have a feeling that a lot of them are the same. Hello, Sam. I have a feeling that a lot of them are the same because, especially the 0.7 millimeter, they seem to have the same construction. Now, that one that I was saying where that nib fell out on a couple of them, that one is probably not the same factory. But, you know, all these other ones, they're all coming out of like China these days. And there's not going to be, you know, I don't know, like 20 different manufacturers that are making, I don't know, whatever, the 20 different brands of inks out there, ink, you know, sets. I'm guessing there's probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 manufacturers for all the different sets that are coming out. And that's just the way things are done these days. Like I was explained, something that was explained to me in the outdoor gear world. You know, there's like one company that makes all the tents for all the tent manufacturers, all the tent companies. I don't know about in the world, but in the US at least. And, you know, all these companies have to place their orders for all what they want for the upcoming year. And that's why they can't, if they run out of something, they can't get, you know, more made. So they make these tents and these footprints, not to go in, you know, long explanation here of this. But yeah, I have a feeling that if that's happening in the, you know, in things like textiles and things like that, it's happening in the art market world. And that's why it's good and bad. If they're making a really good product, you can have confidence going from brand to brand that, you know, you're going to be encountering a pretty good product. Okay, so I'm adding in these black highlights here. I'm going to see if I can show you guys where I'm adding it. I'm trying to get that little glare in here. Okay, so you see that right there, there, and there. And then down here, oops, my alarm's going off. I normally pick up my kid at this time, but he had a minimum day. Let me go turn off the alarm. Okay, so I don't want to add too much texturing in the visible, the highly visible areas, but can you see this right here, here, and here? I see these rocks as being fairly textural. So this is something that's going to benefit someone that, you know, has this piece. Just in terms of the overall detailing in here, because these little dots of acrylic paint are also going to be raised. It's kind of like, what do they call it in painting? It's like impasto, I think it is. You know, where it's paint, you know, like oil paints, it might be raised, or acrylics or something like that. So it's physically textural and raised like that. And I also, it's not just, you know, oh, we can touch it and it's raised or something like that. But these little raised areas like this, especially in acrylics or something like that, they're going to capture the light a little bit, even when they're dry. So, you know, it's one of those nice things about acrylic paints these days and these types of pens. You are dealing with, you know, somewhat of a three-dimensional type of detail if you use them that way. I mean, some people just color the whole things with pens, like the adult coloring book market. But I mean, think about it. I mean, one of the nice things about things like embossing is that it's raised. Everyone loves that look because it's raised and shiny, and that's what acrylic paints are. You know, they're kind of raised and shiny. They're not quite as raised as like an embossed mark, but you know, nevertheless, it is sitting off the surface of the paper. So it's one of those little kind of things in, I don't know, whatever card making these days that makes it really easy to get that type of feature, you know, without doing embossing. Of course, we can emboss on here. It'd be kind of interesting to have some of this kelp here. This is the twisting leaves. It just, you know, when you do it under the water like this, it becomes sea kelp. So, yeah. But anyways, yeah, going back to the whole talk about pens, I'm pretty confident that just with that, besides that one, like I said, you know, where the nibs were kind of coming out, I'm pretty confident that, you know, just about any brand out there, it's going to give me a pretty good product and something with longevity. So, yeah, it just comes down to the best deal, and I certainly shop by the best deals. I look at the pricing and whatnot, and also the collection of selection of colors. Okay, I don't use too many of my darker, bright colors. Like I'm hardly ever going into. I doubt if I've ever used like these tones here before, like a dark purple and a, you know, like a magenta. It's not that I couldn't, but they tend to be, for those types of darker tones, I tend to be using a faster application of media, which is dye-based inks, you know, to get some kind of thing like that going, where I'll use the kind of more pastel range of tones, you know, to white for my highlights over the top of it. It just makes it faster. But that being said, I grabbed these ones for this piece right here because it was so dark, and I just want that additional type of detailing in there, or to see if I can get it. I haven't done this before, you know, with like black and, you know, the darker tones like that, you know, kind of shadow embellishments. Okay, so you can see right here in that black range right there. So you can't really tell like that, but then, you know, if you hold this up at certain angles like that, you can see that black. Now, you're seeing it a lot easier now, too, because it's wet and shiny. But hopefully it kind of gives us a little bit of a raised... like I said, it's kind of like an embellishment of some sorts. That might be kind of cool. It might not be. But we'll know, you know, more than than I did when I went into it. So, um, one of the things I mentioned, I think in the description, I think I wrote this, but one common thing between all these little tweak things, it seems to be kind of the larger paint pens in the foreground area because that's where you would, the foreground, something closer is where those types of areas can hold up kind of a larger, kind of textural element, because it represents something much closer to us. So, you would potentially see a much larger, say, reflected light in that area than, you know what I mean, something that's supposed to represent something 20 feet away or farther than that. Hello, Kay. Yeah, this one, I don't know when this came out. This is probably from a couple years ago. I did this one, and I remember I did a quick version scene of this one as well. So this one is there's again, there seems to be a common trait with this one. When I do these larger pieces, I tend to be using a lot of the brookside boulders and boulders with lichen in the foregrounds for my rocks. That was in Acadia, Alluring Acadia, and that other one with the all of the different that close up kind of firefly scene from a couple days ago. This is the fisherman right here. So these rocks down here in the foreground and in the back, well, not in the background, but on the sides up there. But that foreground area is just using trees instead. But that's the Brookside boulders. And then here, I mean, it's practically all Brookside boulders like this. If anyone of you were in the live stream on this one, the tweaking video, I did look up fireflies, and I was shocked to see the spotting of fireflies in. I read that article that someone, looked up while we were doing that because I was asking where fireflies were because I didn't think there were any in the West in general, but I guess they have been spotted, or some version of them, amongst the many varieties. In the Santa Monica Mountains and down where I live in the Laguna Mountains, which is in kind of San Diego County area. But I was shocked. I've, of course, never seen anything out here in the form of fireflies at all. We get kind of a if you take like a black light out into the deserts, I guess you can, those like scorpions and things like that kind of have that bioluminescence or something like that, or kind of, I don't know, not bioluminescence, but they kind of glow for some reason. But I was shocked at the fireflies. Okay, this is kind of like a royal blue here. And I've added it right down in here. This is kind of faint over here. We have darker elements in here in the foreground. And then I stamped this out in, kind of a steel blue or something like that to represent something farther off. The farther off something is typically, in terms of visibility, it's lighter. So you go lighter in the distance, darker in the foreground. I mean, it doesn't always have to be like that. You go dark, light, dark, you know what I mean, for whatever artistic license or something like that. But just in general, light traveling, which it is, light has to reflect off something in the distance and get back to your eye when it's going through all that different atmosphere, much less water, you know what I mean? It's going to be much lighter in the distance. So in something like this, there's that smaller, I don't know if you can see it there, but it's like these smaller little twisting leaves in here. That's the smaller version of these ones right here, but you just go darker. So these ones are in green. So that one's like in a light blue. This one right here is in a couple different shades of green. And then you have that same one right here, stamped down here in black. So the lighter you go, the more distance it is. And that's what, we'll kind of be doing here with the same, I don't know, kind of general concept in these paint pens, I think. I say I think because it's going to be, you got to kind of look at things too visually. And, you can use these kind of different concepts as kind of a general starting point, but it all comes down to what looks good, If you start adding something down and you're adding light in an area that would typically be darker or something like that or whatever. Just add a few dots down if it's something like this application process and see what looks good. Candy has a silly fish looking at you. Well, that's good too, right? Why not? Uh, is it like Finding Nemo? Like it's something like this would be cool with like a Finding Nemo type of thing. Is it real cartoony or something? Oh, there you go, Candy. Yeah, yeah, I looked that up there. Yeah, it was in. So in this article that I read, it was Santa Monica Mountains, Laguna Mountains. I think you mentioned both of those. But then there was the south side of San Jacinto Mountain. They've been spotted there as well. And now I didn't hike in the lower kind of elevations of San Jacinto. I was always up in the upper elevations there. That was like my main kind of hiking area for my summer types of hikes. When the deserts got too hot, Joshua Tree, Mojave desert type of hiking. I'd be up in San Jacinto all the time, up in those rocks. But yeah, it mentioned that too. So, and then I looked up YouTube. There was I think I typed in like Fireflies, California, or something like that. And there was one video. It was just in someone's yard. I think it was Northern Cal or something like that. It was like, you don't see this too often or something like that. There was this couple little, flashing little, lights in someone's like bushes in their front yard. So very rare, of course. But I mean, if these types of things weren't, necessarily known or seen before, and suddenly they are, maybe it's, you know, maybe they were imported or something like that, came out in something, and maybe there's going to be more in the future. I don't know. It says that their favorite food um, was snails, so I found that kind of interesting. Okay, I'm adding kind of this greenish gray here, right in here. And I know these tweaking videos when I'm doing these paint pens, it's not very visible as to what I'm doing in here unless there's more contrast. And this one right here, I'm trying not to create too much contrast because I don't want to create too much, of a change of the lighting in here. Normally it's easy for me because I have like bright light hitting something, but this is supposed to be like, I don't know, whatever it is. Like this is probably represents something about like 20 feet down or something like that. Not super deep or anything like that, but I'm adding these textures going on here in the shadows, okay? I'll add in a little bit more white too, just to make it a little bit more sparkly, but I'm roughly adding these textures into areas where it's roughly the same value, so there's just a little bit more of a textural element to it. Maybe you can see it right there. So this is just all blue. And then I'm adding this little touch in there. Again, it's roughly the same. There you go, right there. See that right there? On tops of those rocks. Right, when you go like that, it's the same value, but see, it catches a little bit more light. Not that people are going to be looking at it that glary, but when I turn this a little bit, for me here, that area right there kind of shows up a little bit more. I wouldn't call this interactive or something like that because it's not that like super apparent, but it's just a little bit more. And this is just such a big piece right here. I mean, this is like a half page scene in here. So if we just look at it just from that perspective, that's not going to be that interesting. So the more types of little things that we add in here are going to be better from a textural perspective. The underwater light scene, I don't know, CM. I've done this type of underwater seen quite a few times, but it would be the only one I think that would be 8.5 by 11. So I think I did about 2 or 3 of them like this, and some of them were roughly, I think, in the same. So it'd be like video. Let's say it's 360 whatever, and there would be 2 or 3 of them, I think, right around there, or just one of them, and then the easiest, uh, like a quick version of it or something like that. I've lived in San Jacinto my entire life and have never seen. Where are you located, Kay? Yeah. Well, that's what it said in that thing. It said the southern slope of it, San Jacinto, they've been spotted. I was saying, I've certainly never seen anything out there, like in the higher elevations at least. And I was hiking a lot, kind of like at dusk, many times on, like super long day hikes where you're getting out of there at nighttime. And I'd be hiking, in the warmer months, so that's when I guess we would have spotted them. But yeah, I don't think it's very common. It's probably very rare, but I mean, it was just one of the, I think, 4 spots that was kind of pointed out as areas where they've been spotted. You would think, I don't know, if you're thinking of like California in general, you'd think it would be like in a, I don't know, I guess it has to be a little bit of a wet, so warmer, but also wet too for them. So it couldn't be like completely dry like out in the chaparral areas, but I don't know. I want to see them though. I think it'd be kind of interesting. All right, so this pen right here, this one's really great. The black was really black, but this is kind of adding a little bit of real subtle type of lighting into these areas. Okay, so say something like this in here, where it's just like, I don't know, it's like a monochrome, mono value, grayish tinge. I mean, there's a little bit of blue kind of poking through there a little bit, but I think this little highlight right here is dark enough where it's not obtrusive to the overall kind of lighting scheme in there. It's just kind of making it a little bit lighter like that. And again, it's a little bit more textural like that. Maybe that's a little bit too much. But, you can go over these layers again, like I said, with, a darker tone like black or something like that. Hello, Alicia and John Johnson. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, I hope everyone's having a great Friday here. 8 today, 3 to 4 inches of snow. I wonder did Alaska get any of that, I don't know, kind of weird weather? I know it was coming down from, I think Washington got something, so I wasn't quite sure if it made it all the way to Alaska. So that's like, see, I don't complain about the weather, of course, like in San Diego, in Southern California, when it's like negative degrees, in other areas like that. And some of the areas really not too far from us. But I don't know. How is how are things like natural gas bills and something like that up in Alaska? Or maybe Alaska, it's like, like natural gas is cheaper. Because I think we'd be running the heater a lot more. Okay, so this might be the one right here. This might be the magic kind of pen here for this piece. It's a little bit more, not impressionistic, but I don't know if we're kind of depicting light or something like that. See that down here on these little forms like that? That's standing out a little bit too much, but remember, these pens, they dry darker than what they look like when they've been freshly applied, okay? So this looks different too. You know, if I'm doing these types of touches, I think on top of like a glossy paper too, they're a lot more surface oriented. So I think the finished application or dot, whatever, I think it's going to be a little bit more raised because it's not absorbing into the paper quite as much as a, you know, semi-gloss paper. I use this, okay, so if you just joined in, I use the semi-gloss on this one because I was using the hybrid styles of inks, not this color, of course, but you know, a lot of the Moonlight Duo types of tones in here for that, I don't know, whatever, that creamy, you know, kind of almost oily, oil pastels-ish type of look on here. A lot of it, you know, these are like a lot of experiments here too. Okay, yeah. Well, there you go, yeah. I don't know what they would be referring to, the southern slope, or was it the northern? It was like the southern or northern slope of San Jacinto, you know. So I don't know if it'd be like on that, you know, base of Tahquitz or something like that area. You know, back in that, I forget the name of that highway. I don't know if it's still the 243, but back in that area, I guess I could see stuff in there, you know, before you start going up in elevation. Okay, so let's see here. This one's pretty light right here. I'm a little bit hesitant right here as I go into it, but let's see how it goes. Okay, not too bad. It's not super dark. I mean, not light. So light against dark. Okay, actually, this is perfect right here. So I'm just kind of lightly dabbing this down too. I'm going to try to hold. I hope you guys can see some of this, you know, when I hold it up. But okay, so right in here, this little passageway in here, I'm going to use this beam of light like it's illuminating the surrounding rocks that it's passing by or encountering. It's just like an excuse to bring some additional lighting, which I think equates to interest because there's a little bit more contrast in there to these areas like so. Kay, did you used to shop at, or ever go out to, I mean, it's not going to be super close to you, but did you ever go to a little bazaar? That was out in, Little Bazaar was out in, what was that, Lake Elsinore. I asked that because, you know, out in that area there, you know, there's not a lot of stores. I don't know if there was probably scrapbooking stores in, like Hemet or one or two or whatever. I don't know, however, maybe it met, like just pure stamping stores. Like a lot of the people that lived in, like Palm Springs would take my classes out in, a little bazaar. Okay, this one's looking pretty good too. Okay, this adding more of this type of highlighting. The more texturing you get down, I guess it just makes more sense that, you know, to get this, to add this texture in here because it doesn't, again, I've mentioned this in the past, if you add a few dots down somewhere and you don't have any of that other texture anywhere, it kind of looks weird. But I'm adding this down here. I'm trying to go as subtle as I can where it's barely visible. So I started off with the black and the darker areas like this, but then I'm getting lighter and lighter. Okay, this is already going, I don't know, we're getting close to white here in terms of the available pen colors here. But yeah, see this right in here? That little type of touch like that. And you can see it right here. There's like these little kind of textures right along the side here. That's what we've been adding right here. So I don't know. I guess it's bringing something into focus too, where it's, I don't know. I guess it's otherwise kind of a little bit more obscure, which I guess was kind of my concept of it. You know what you might see if someone was underwater diving, scuba diving, but from a, I don't know, whatever piece of art perspective, that doesn't, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to the best visual. Okay, you're not having kind of a nice range of textures. You know, having something like crisp down there is good, as opposed to it being a little bit more, everything is a little bit more subdued, you know, which it looks like in reality, like I said, but, you know, in terms of a finished piece, you know, it's still, you know, we still have the same kind of, I don't know, rules or whatever, you know, that can make something potentially better. In terms of visual, I don't know, just in terms of visual richness in a piece. So contrast, okay, adding more contrast in here. It doesn't have to be, contrast isn't always just black and white. There's textural contrast too, soft and crisp, you know, warm and cool. There's, you know, dull and bright in there. So we're just dealing with kind of the textural contrast in here. So this little passage right in here, this is really coming together a little bit, you know, or a lot more now. Right in here. I just added that right on top there. So again, you know, if you're looking at just from distance like that, it's not really quite so apparent, but when you get a little bit closer like that, this little passage right in here, I'll do something. I haven't, see this ray right here is supposed to be closer to us because it's going in front of these, you know, through the kelp. I've kind of oscillated it. I have it a little bit brighter, duller, brighter right here. Like the kelp's kind of breaking that up a little bit. But let's see. I'm trying to think of, okay, this little rock down here is a little bit, maybe this is too big of a dot though. That would be too much contrast. So maybe the, you know, the darker, finer detail might look better down in that area. Anchorage, Alaska got dumped on, but not us in the North Pole. So strange. Huh. It was, they got dumped on kind of in a slightly out of the ordinary way, like a little bit more so than, you know, your average year. I'm just curious about that, if it's been kind of like, you know, kind of the extremes everywhere. I was just talking to my brother. We used to surf, and we were talking about these. I don't know, it's like once every 2 decades, if not some of the largest swells to come, you know, around over this last like 2 weeks. Then I don't know, whatever, when anyone can remember, there's like areas that are breaking, waves that are breaking, that I never even saw a wave at before. It was like, what? You know, that breaks there. I never even seen a wave, you know, any wave break at all out, you know, in this, you know, some areas. All right, so that is that. Okay. I got to make sure that I don't kind of go like overboard And if you do yet, I just have to tone it out a little bit because you can colorize some of this. I would just take some more like black pigment ink and you knock it down a little bit if you make it like too bright. I don't know, maybe it's like phosphorescent organisms down there, or something like that. Okay, so did I use this one yet, or which one was that? Was that one? I don't even remember. Okay, so I think it's time to get into some of the lighter ones, or the smaller ones, the 0.7 millimeter here. All right, let me start off with the dark, just to begin with here. Okay, Kay used to go to a little bazaar. Yeah, they closed quite some time ago, but that was the store out in that general area there. There were other stores in Palm Springs from time to time that I knew of, that carried Stampscapes, but it didn't seem like they were around too long. A couple years, if that, back in the day. I used to love a little bazaar though. I really liked that store. It was like anybody ever, if anyone's been stamping a while, there were stores and like stamp stores at certain points in time, but they started at a certain point in time. It seems like they just got filled up more and more and more to where it was like in a lot of different stores, it could be like a labyrinth. Now, a lot of them were, they were like organized as much as you can get, but there was just so many products coming out at the time. New companies, new stamp companies, new, different types of pads and everything like that. And, stores like to have samples up, next to the stamps they were selling. Okay, so I'm back in this 0.7 millimeter, and I'm adding it down into these darker areas again, okay? So I'm going to build up some of these textures. This one's a little bit lighter than this one, it looks like, although they look exactly the same from the cap here. But this one seems to be a little bit lighter in value, unless it just looks lighter right now because it's not dry yet, where it dries it gets a little bit more see-through. I'm getting a little bit more gutsy. Okay, I'm going over and layering some of those applications of black that were laid down. Okay, this one's working out pretty good for those real kind of, darker areas in here. And it's kind of, I'm interspersing it with the, is that the word? With the larger textures in the larger 3 millimeter dots, and that seems to be kind of mellowing it out a little bit in a good way, where it's not so kind of like in your face of a larger tone. So okay, so right in here, I've added quite a lot in here. Okay, you can't see it at all, I'm sorry. It's only those like brighter ones that are showing, but I'm working up to that, okay? So, yeah, but see that little detailing in there? I think that it looks like a more textural surface. And again, if you just kind of have it in these, like, see in here, we don't see the rocks as much because they're in shadow, so I'm not going to do that in there. But just this little passage in here, having that detailing in there, it just kind of reinforces again that these areas right in here are closer to us than these other areas in the background where you wouldn't see that type of detailing in there. Let's see. We had one. I forget the name. Oh yeah. Temecula. Yeah, in Riverside. Right. Yeah, you had the Riverside stores too. Oh gosh. Can't remember the name of that store in Riverside. There were so many stores around at one point in time. What about down there, up there in North Pole, Alaska? Then did you guys ever? Have you been? How long have you been stamping, Licia? You've been stamping a while. You know, did you have some scrapbook? You probably had some scrapbooking stores up that way, right? Stamp stores, there weren't too many around through the years. There was a really good one, though. And again, I can't think of the names right off the top of my head. Um, but there were some of them. And then there was, what is that? I think, were there some manufacturers in Alaska too? Was it North Star or something like that? Can't remember. Okay, here's blue right here. I've never even used it before, so I'm have to get it feeding here. But like I said before on some of these live videos, there were enough stores in Alaska at one point in time. And when I say enough, that's relatively speaking. But for some, I want to know who the coordinator was for this show, but I think there was an it was probably in Anchorage, but there was a stamp convention there. And it was probably small, you know, but I was surprised at just the sheer number of vendors that signed up to do it. But that mean, you know, I was sure a lot of them said, "All right, Alaska, you know, um, you know, kind of a fun, you know, vacation business trip right off." I think it only happened once. There were a lot of Alaska stamp cruises, of course, but yeah, but the convention, I don't know if it went off 2 years or one. Okay, um, some darker area highlights in here. I don't need to put too much of this down. I think I already took care of it with this one right here. I'm probably using the exact same paint because I wouldn't be surprised if these two, you know, different companies are getting their inks from the same, you know, manufacturer there and, you know, whatever, China. All right. Okay, so see that right down there? Does that... Okay, so this is what this area kind of looked like before, you know, and there. Now, see, it's this area right in here that's getting a lot of the change. Otherwise, it kind of looked like, you know, that there where there's not too much. I mean, it was lighter in there, but, you know, just texturally, it's getting a little bit more interesting in a subtle way, I think. Like that. I don't know, I think it looks way better, actually, now. And now let's, you know, let's see if I can keep from ruining it. I'm just joking. But that could happen. I'm saying that because that's what a lot of people feel, you know what I mean? They feel that like going kind of, you know, oh, I went too far. And I get where they're coming from because I have to be conscious of that too. But the thing is, when people are going too far, it's usually not with the coloring. I mean, sometimes it is, like where they lose all their lighting, like in here where I've left these rocks a little bit lighter, okay? With the anticipation of adding in these light beams into it. They, you know, if they tone it all out, like with black or something like that, where there's not that illumination happening in there. Okay, but when they're doing this, when you're adding like a little dot, you're concentrating on like a 1 inch square space, okay, at a time, half-inch square space or something, you know what I mean? And you're not kind of, you know, we're looking at it like that, you know, and then you need to hold it out like that, like at arm's distance, like from standard viewing distance, and just scan the, you know, the look of it overall, in terms of adding like finer details into it like that. And then you get a good gist of how it, you know, what you're doing, how it's influencing the overall look of the piece, okay? And that's where, you know, I mean, I have to remember to do that all the time too, to this day. because I can go overboard with it, especially with things like splatter painted applications of Dr. Martens. I go way too much all the time because it's really fun. So I don't know. I don't think that's bad though. Sometimes you sacrifice a little bit of the finished product for kind of the overall fun of the process. Why not? You know. So yeah, keep an eye on what you're doing um, in terms of the overall, and you won't have things sneak up on you as much anymore. So you see, I'm adding in those little textural elements like that. This is where that green again that works pretty good. Or no, actually, I think I was using this one the other day. I thought about using this one because there are greens in here. Okay, that I wasn't going to do that, but now that I see this happening like this, like I said, you got to read the thing. I thought this would stand out a little bit too much, but I'm starting to get really textural in here, or a lot more than I thought would look good, just in theory, but now in application, it's okay. Um, all right, let's see. I'm missing some messages here. Let's see. More snow and all at once. That's what we had down here in California, of course. It was more, it was rain, but kind of all condensed, of course, into like a few weeks. A lot of the reservoirs went like from like drastically low to, letting water out of the smaller reservoirs at least. I don't know what they said about like Shasta, the largest reservoir in California. Yeah, I was watching. I was mentioning to some people. I was watching like that ice storm post, videos. It's like people slipping around in the streets and stuff like that, or cars. It seems so dangerous to be driving around in there. Yeah. I'm with you, Candy. Those stamp stores were, uh, gold, for the stamp industry, the stamp communities, especially. A lot of people met a lot of friends, at stores, through the stores, through clubs, and especially the workshops. Yeah. It's the in-person classes and things like that too. All right, thanks for joining in, Alicia. Hello, Rhonda. Oh, you missed a lot of you missed about I don't know, maybe 300, 400 dots. You missed the first 400 dots, but we have that's nothing. We have 3,000 to go here. So, okay, so you've just joined in. This was it's an 8.5 by 11, and everything was kind of muted in terms of the overall kind of visuals of this scene, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm adding in kind of these crisp textures with the paint pens, of course. That seems to be that's the big thing, when I'm doing these tweaks. I didn't have the paint pens before, the paint pen sets that had so many different colors that I can use. So I was working with a really limited range of values and colors too, where they really, it really lends themselves to these textures, and color variations lend themselves to a much kind of richer overall detailed areas. Okay, that's where they're really great at, in my opinion. Is in the details as far as like scenes go and stuff like that. Your cards. Okay, so that being said, okay, so paint pens like this. Okay, let's say you had a bold word stamp and it said "Happy Birthday" or something like that. Okay, How this is applicable to something like that, okay, this is, I'm doing underwater rocks right here. Well, okay, you can do the same type of concept. Well, what do you mean, on a word stamp? Well, if it's a song that said happy birthday or something like that, you got happy birthday. One of the things you can do, you can stamp it out in a mono value tone, just in whatever color you want to. And then if you do this thing, this is like one of those things they do in rendering, with word forms. You can go over the top of it, if it's on a white piece of paper, and put a little bit of white pigment ink on the top, giving it that frosty look. So it looks like it's been, the happy, up top, all those letter forms look a little bit like they're being illuminated by top lighting. And then, so whatever color you stamp it in, let's say you stamped it in green, you can come into it with a green little highlight and put little highlights on the tops of those letter forms. Okay. Or you can do it without the white ink too, but this makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional when you add those highlights. It's like this can right here, okay? So this is all mono value in terms of this aluminum color, right? But then you have all these little highlights on these edges right here that are glary, so here's this uniform yellow, right? And if you add in, see, that's not white right there. It's a lighter value of this color right here. So you can see my knuckles right there too. So that's the top little side. So if you add little, highlights on these little things like that in the color that they are, you can really make things look a lot more dimensional that way. So it's these little details like that, that you can add in, that make objects kind of pop off the screen a little bit more in a dimensional way. It could be something very subtle, It could be bold too if you want to. You just add more, larger highlight or something like that, a larger form if you want to, and like a 3mm pen than like a 0.7. I used to think these were too big, and I wish there were like a 1.5 because it seems like everything's like 0.7mm to 3mm. But I find that if you just, touch this down in a much, lighter application, you can get almost like a 0.7 or a 1mm kind of dot. And then if you add the full thing down, you can get a much, larger dot too. So you can get a lot of variation in there. Okay, so here's this little passage of kind of greenish tinged light, and why not? Maybe there's some seaweed or whatever, down in the depths on those rocks. It wouldn't be moss. Okay, so you see these leaves right here, this kelp right here. Let's do that thing with the highlights on them, okay? So maybe white might be a little bit extreme. I think it'd be okay. But let's go with maybe not this warm tone right here, but let's go with this blue tone, and let's add some of these highlights on the tops of some of these little kelp leaves like that. Okay. Again, I don't want to go overboard with this, but let's just see how this looks here. So I'm doing it on the top sides of these leaves. I might be going too subtle where I don't know. You that are watching right now might not be able to see this at all, but let's see if we can see it. Okay, I'll have to go to white, I think, for you to see it, but it's really subtle. It's on the tops of some of these leaves right here. I'll go to white here just so you can see it. A little more contrast. Is this an underwater scene? More space-like, Rhonda. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, it's water. That's where these are fish right here. Okay, so here's the little white on these, and I'm keeping the highlights on, for the most part, on this kelp. Represents kelp here. The stamp design is twisting leaves, though. But I thought it looks like kelp when you put it under in this type of scenario right here. Okay, I want to go overboard too because, if you go a little bit, or way too overboard with the white dots, it's like, you know, instead of an underwater scenario, you're stamping out the electric light parade, at Disneyland or something like that. But here's those little dots on that. So let's see if you can see that. Yeah, yeah, see that? You can see these leaves are standing out a little bit more. So you put the highlights on some of them, and then some you don't. The ones with the highlights look like it's a little bit raised, doesn't it? Let's do the same thing right in here in this light. I'm keeping these dots pretty small. This is already kind of the 0.7 millimeter pen, but I'm also just, yeah, like, I don't know, whatever, like kissing the page with it, just like a small little dot like that. Let's put some of it on the, what do I call it, the stem. Is it still the stem when it's kelp? Okay, so I've added it right down in here. Yeah, it looks a little bit more dimensional. And why don't we do that for this one up here as well? This one is really getting close to the light, so I'll add a little bit more highlighting on it. Um, all right, so there you go with that. Kind of raises it out. I might have went a little bit too much on that one, but oh well. Okay, now in that scene that I was tweaking the other day, we did these fireflies in there, lightning bugs, whatever you call them from wherever you are. But I splatter painted this with the Dr. Martens bleed proof white. So there's these little spray pattern dots in here. But I think it could stand to use some raised, or just larger, not raised, but I guess these are raised, but a little bit of larger kind of bubbles coming up. In a nighttime scenario, these just represent stars. What else? Like I said, fireflies. So little suspended little kind of dots like that. It can be snow in a snowy type of terrain. I'm not saying this scene. I'm just saying when you do these little overlays of textures like this, it just represents different things. But what it does is it adds another layer of something that looks like it's kind of closer to us over the whole thing, or wherever you want it to go. You can, if it's um, like in a nighttime sky, it gives dimension to it. Okay, so let's go with some large ones. You can put it right in the beam too. I mean, cluster it a little bit, like there's this little, area that's, really um, bubbling or whatever with oxygen. If I'm gutsy, I'll add in a really big one. Like, I don't know, not huge, but yeah, I'll go like something like that. I don't want to do it with the 3 millimeter. I'd rather just do a little dot and then just scribble it as large as I want. Watching it as I go. Oh, okay. So I'm doing this all in white like that, but let's grab and let's do that in a blue, maybe a little bit more subtle, but kind of a darker bubble, kind of within the color scheme, like something like that. And you can see that one's like more dull. It's a dull bubble. So again, that's kind of the fun with multicolor, whatever, textural devices in the form of these pens, is that you can add little types of detailing in kind of a fairly subtle way. All right. Look at this. I'm looking at this scene right here. I think this looks pretty good like this too. The fish are kind of, swimming downward like that, but this scene is kind of originally, it's like this. It's more of a vertical, but I'm kind of questioning this might almost look better like that. We need a little scuba diver or something like that in here. But I think the additions here with the texturing and detailing like that, it answered the kind of the issues that were going on here. I am going to go with a larger dot, I think, here. Larger bubble. Yeah, right. Something like that. But yeah, that looks kind of interesting like this to me now that I look at it. Okay. It's a real texture up here because I think I spray patterned with the Dr. Martens from this angle down, it looks like, because this is really splattered up here now that I look at it. Okay, so I'm just following suit with some additional dots coming this way, and I'll kind of taper it, going with a little bit more up there to less down below. It'd be kind of interesting if there was a stamp design that had like some sort of boat, but from looking at it from below up. I don't think I've ever seen a stamp design like that, Okay, so that is that. A little bit more visual interest in here. Those little black dots are really shiny, though. You can see them like all throughout here in that texture. There you go. You can see a little bit more of them. Those apparently are just going to stay that way. I'm going to spray this again though. I don't have to because these pens adhere to the surface just fine. But I think just for a little bit of uniformity, I'm going to spray it. I think I'm going to spray this one. I've been spraying the last 2 days with my Krylon triple thick glossy, and that stuff, I don't know. I was getting some drips with it the first time I used it, but I've just been using it just solely the triple thick on a bunch of pieces. So I'm getting a much more uniform kind of application of it. Before I was using some triple thick on some scenes and then going to the UV resistant clear, which is 1/3 the thickness. So I think I was spraying too much with the triple thick or something like that the first time. And I was spraying the pieces kind of vertical like this in a live stream. So it was applying there in some areas. And with the triple thick, it's so thick that if you really get a little bit too much in one area, it's going to start running like that. And I got a couple drips on a couple of my pieces. So I'm going with much smaller quantities of them. Like just spraying like 3 at a, 6 at a time, or if they're small pieces or something like that, and spraying things flat, okay? But I think this could stand to go a little bit glossier or something like that. And I think it would look pretty cool. So this is done again on a semi-gloss paper so that you can use, I could use media that needs a little bit of tooth to adhere to it, like the Moonlight Duos if you're going to be blending them on there. So things like colored pencils and pastels, you want to use something like a matte or semi-gloss for those types of types of mediums. And if you want it to have kind of a glossier look, I've mentioned this before, like even with the Krylon UV, resistant or the clear, you can spray them and you can get a much glossier look. But the glossier, you can get really glossy just in one coating with the triple thick. The triple thick is really kind of crazy. And that being said, if you get that, your pan's probably going to last 1/3 as long if you're applying it, because it is triple thick, so it's going on super thick, and it's the same size can. So, but it really gave a real super glassy look to some of the pieces, and I just showed them on another video today. But I don't know, I was kind of surprised at it. They almost have like a glazed look to it, so like a fire glazing or something like that. I've never used like a paint on polyurethane before, which would probably be even thicker, maybe. But that triple thick is a really convenient way, because, I don't know if too many people, like applying something by hand, with like a brush on their pieces. Maybe some of those other types of mediums in the past. I think Judykins had some sort of like something. Was it their diamond glaze or something like that, where they just kind of apply it over the top by, I don't know if it was by hand or you put it on a sponge or something like that. I'm not quite sure. But yeah. So, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. But, okay, the reason why I might do that, though, is because, I don't know, unless I want that black to be kind of really raised up like that in that background. The black looks shinier for some reason than the other colors, too. I don't know why. This one right here, black on black, but the lighter pastel-y tones are not. So this is almost like gloss, and these ones are like, seem to be going on like in matte. I don't know, not good or bad, but just, I don't know, just a textural quality to it. So let's see. Okay, so candy, you get bubbles, right, with triple thick. Mix doesn't look like that. You meant bubbles, right? I haven't gotten that. Okay, so here's the thing too. When I've been doing the triple thick in the past, it hasn't been as cold as it is now. So I was doing some spraying at nighttime too, okay, where it's just not drying as fast. So it's probably suspended a little bit more before it just kind of, flattens out or something like that. And I suspected that could be helping with that triple thick. In the past I've been doing it where it's much more, it dries much, much faster. So I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm speculating that kind of a slower, colder spray environment might help that one, because it has a longer chance to, I'm talking about like a couple seconds to just kind of flatten out. So like I said, I didn't get kind of those drips or anything like that. I never got bubbles though, that I know of or that I can remember, but definitely like dripping areas like that. So again, I'm spraying them flat instead of upright. So I don't know, doing like a spray sealing video, you know what I mean? Using triple thick's probably not a good idea for me, because I always have things angled up so that, I can have the camera on them and people can see what's going on. But the triple thick is really penetrating too, and making things like super, super vibrant and rich too. Again, you know what I mean? And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not, because it can create like a huge amount of contrast. So in something like this, it might change the character of the piece a little bit more, where like a Krylon UV, it's not supposed to change the color. I mean, the character of a surface. It's just supposed to seal what you have achieved and what you're looking at, but it just has a protective coating on it. But the triple thick goes in there and it really influences kind of the overall look because it's staying on there wet longer, so it's penetrating all the media longer before it dries. Like I said, it was kind of cool on some of these glossy paper ones that I've been doing. So, hello, Linda. Good to see you. I've been tweaking this one right here, so all of that detailing through it here with the highlights, that's what's been added in this one. A couple people did this one too on the in the Facebook group after I posted, I think. I did this one too on. I just saw it somewhere. I was thinking about mounting it or something like that. I don't know. I've been mounting like I don't know, not hundreds, but dozens and dozens of pieces over those last couple days for giveaways and stuff like that too. So I'm coming across all these other pieces, including this one. It's like, oh, I forgot about this one. It was sitting, I don't know, in another box, but I thought this one could definitely improve from the tweaks on there, the paint pen tweaks. So, yeah, all that little detailing there. Okay, so yeah, you can kind of see it in there pretty well. So remove, I don't know, the before and after this one was, I don't know, just remove with your mind about, it's like 600 dots, and that's what this looked like without them. And these little larger bubbles and things like that. So instead of these being fireflies, it's an air bubble. Let's see. Let's go with another, like a bubble right here. Okay. So I'm kind of doing this in a little bit of this S curve like that going up there. And then of course there's, current and underneath the water all the time too. So, but these little things like this, I think that helped it out a lot in that little area, especially in the lit illuminated area like that. Okay, so light beams, it looks like by this point in time when I did this one, I had learned to kind of oscillate the light beams and not have them so uniformly applied. So before, I would do like a straight beam that was like the same solid uniform application of white, okay? But you can see in here where it gets a little bit stronger, less, a little bit stronger. Sometimes it's like I even break it up where you don't even see some ink in there, so it gets broken up a lot more. So on this one right here, this one it's a little bit lighter here, so it's strong, weak, strong. But do you see this part down here? I don't even have the other side of this beam on there. I just had one piece of paper. I mean, I had it masked off like this, okay, with, like two pieces of paper like this, okay, and another piece down here, but then I just added tone from one side like that and not on this side. So, I don't know. It represents the bottom side of it because this is more of like a vertical like this, but I'm starting to think I might like it horizontal maybe more or as well. So yeah, oscillate your beams like that between strong and be coming down from the sun through some clouds or through some trees. If there's some trees in here and we have these crepuscular rays coming down like that, then have some areas like this where it's like where you barely have anything right here, but you really break up that sunbeam like that or that ray or whatever. And I think it looks more realistic. And see right here in the distant areas like this too, what I started doing at this point in time was it's stronger up by the source and then it's weaker, and if not just peters out completely by the time it reaches the kind of the far end of it. I mean, you don't have to do it on all of them, but look at how narrow this one is here, right here too. And also, if you have a ton of beams or something like that, and you have a really wide one like that, you can also have kind of a real narrow one like that within the larger beam, maybe a larger, weaker beam, and then you can have a stronger, narrower one. So it looks like the beams are not just like this on a hand equally, but you have other beams going over the top of them, so the beams could look more three-dimensional too that way. So when you break up your beam, in other words, when you do less application of ink, it's not harder to do. You're just not doing it so uniform. Up here, it's a weaker beam. So your beams in here can look more distant too. In stamp designs, the darker it looks closer, okay? And the weaker ones, like this rock right here, is stamped out in like a blue. This one is stamped in black, so it looks more distant. You can see that bluish gray right here in that rock, right? But in light, too, the brighter it looks, the closer it is. And the darker it is, the weaker the beam, it looks farther away. So lighter, close, and thinner and darker, farther away. So you can really play around with your distance with, both light and dark media. And it just depends on how much you apply to it of them. Okay? So anyways, yeah. That being said, yeah, this is a tweak right here. Some people did it on the Facebook group, Linda. I remember seeing it. Oh, but what I was getting at was I did the same composition also in gold too, which was kind of fun. I did a full page piece, and I stamped out all the rocks. I don't know if it was in gold ink. It might have been when I was just doing all my gold and white on gold experiments like that. So it was the Brilliance gold because it dries on the gold cardstock, and then white beams in there. And I don't know, I would have stamped out the fish in gold or something like that too. But I was really experimenting around with the underwater scenario like that, which is really fun. But yeah. Pictures, divers. Yeah, that's what we were kind of looking for here, Kay. And that's what I was thinking of too, in terms of the visual of it. But then I thought, okay, that's what it looks like when you're underwater, when you're looking in kind of a weak, kind of a visibility type of situation, where things aren't quite so clear. But I thought, that being said, we can get the gist of it in something like this, but we can still apply some of the things that make a visual potentially more interesting in terms of sharper kind of textures in there, in the forms of these little dots and highlights like that, that I would apply on things, whatever, above water. But it's still, I don't know, it still needs to be done. For me, in these, whatever, these different scenarios like this, just for, achieving that range. I always like that nice range of things, there's a nice range from light to dark, soft to crisp. That's where these pens came in. That's the crisp part of it. There's a little bit of warm and cool in here. Like I said, I don't know if you can see there's a little bit of greenish tinge in here before. I mean, it's in the kelp too. So, but I think it benefited a little bit. So it's really not doing things very much differently. These rocks might look the same as, something above water, with a little bit of lichen on it or something like that, where underwater it's, more like whatever, illuminated kelp or something like that, or coral, or, something of that sort, on the rock. Okay, let's see. Dina Wakely takes a lot of pictures like this when she does. I'll have to take a look. I always used to watch. Anyone ever watch I grew up watching the Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau. Always loved that program. I think some of the episodes are still on. You can see them here on YouTube. Yeah, the gold foil. Is there a video number on that one, Sam? I mean, I can look. But yeah, the gold foil was kind of interesting. Gold foil is like really fast to do too, because you're not working with you're not doing any shading at all. So, yeah. But yeah, I always like those underwater looking scenarios or something like that. Yeah. salt water. This one's supposed to be like in the ocean, but I'm always watching those documentaries like in the Amazon or something like that. You know, nature, um, those episodes on PBS and whatnot. Some of my favorite ones had to do with water, bodies of water or whatever. The flooded Okavango, was it? All right, folks. There's my tweaking video here. And it's because I want to, what I'm doing is I'm spraying all of my pieces again. This one has already been sprayed before, maybe with a spray fixative where I didn't want to change the flat nature of it. But I thought, okay, I'm really fixing these. And then what I've been doing is I've been adding putting some spray adhesive on the back of these and really just flattening them out, you know, so that I can give them a little bit of bordering and make these, especially these larger pieces, and smaller pieces too, but I want to make them look better. Because in the past, I've always just kind of finished off the scenes. And I was mentioning in another live stream, I looked online to see how many videos I have. And there's 16, at the time, there was 1,660 videos, which doesn't mean 1,660 scenes, but there were a lot of them, and a lot of them I've given away over the years. I've probably given like 1,000 of them, away or something like that. But there is probably at least, I don't know, 1,100 or something like that, 1,200 scenes done, and then I came back with like, I don't know, dozens of them from the past like couple conventions or something like that. But it was time to get them formatted. One of the things too is on this one right here, I was thinking about putting some kind of quote stamp up here or a quote stamp down here in this dull nothing area right here. It'd be kind of cool too. But I'll format this into a scene like that. But now I'm starting to think I kind of like this better like this, on this whatever format. Landscape like this. This almost looks like. So if you did this, wouldn't this be cool too? If I did this one again, I'm looking at this again. I would take that rock stamp and I would put it here, here, and over here, and then this would be like a sea cave underwater. I mean, people have done the caves. I love it where they're looking out in the ocean or something like that out here. I don't know. Maybe someone's done this. I can't remember, Linda, but. In the Facebook group where they've done a cave like this. So, you would have another rock right here and overhang like that. And we can have the beams coming into like this little sea cave area or something like that. I think that would be kind of cool looking. Let's see. So, yeah, I'll look that up. Dina Wakely like that. Okay, have a good rest of evening, everyone. Came on much earlier today. I didn't have to go pick up my kid because he had a minimum day, so. I'm going to get back to doing a lot of refinements on some new designs, so new designs coming out. I'll fill you in on what some of them are, but later on. But I need to get to those, I think, tonight. But I definitely wanted to get in and get this piece done with some additional texturing on that while I'm kind of in the swing of adding in these little refinements on a bunch of these larger scale pieces. And just kind of improving the overall look of them, I think. All right, everyone. Have a good rest of evening, and hope to see you on the next live stream.